Businesses moving to source more supplies domestically after Brexit is a silver lining, an economist has said. Julian Jessup, a former Treasury economist and fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs, agreed that the move had reduced our vulnerability to international shocks in the market, such as those caused by the coronavirus pandemic and the invasion of Ukraine. However, he cautioned that it would in turn increase our vulnerability to domestic shocks and that we should put the interests of consumers ahead of manufacturers. Mr. Jessup, a self-described Brexit optimist, told Express.co.uk that he did not count the move towards domestic supply as a benefit of Brexit because we could have done that without Brexit. The Office for National Statistics, ONS, recently released figures which showed that 58% of businesses had moved to using more UK suppliers since the end of the transition period that followed the UK's withdrawal from the EU. This was down from 71% earlier in the year, with the earlier figures suggesting a reorientation from foreign to domestic suppliers as businesses responded to the change. The data suggests that around half of supply to UK businesses will be sourced domestically as a result of Brexit. The ONS also estimated that the UK had a relative lack of dependence on imported immediate inputs for production, the necessary resources needed to make a product. It said that this was partially explained by the UK's service-dominated economy, but meant the UK may be more resilient to global supply chain disruption than other economies. Given the impact global fluctuations in supply of goods and prices have had in recent months on consumers and the cost of living, this would appear at first glance welcome news for Britons. Mr. Jessup commented that this was a silver lining of Brexit for UK businesses, but was unlikely to be seen in any tangible way by consumers. He said, because trade has been harder for a while, people have found alternative domestic sources for goods. When an external shock comes along, even if it's nothing to do with Brexit, then the UK is actually in a better position because of the fact we're less dependent on these international supply chains than we were. So that's a positive spin, because Brexit has forced more people to source goods from home. That is a benefit when an external shock comes along, but of course we could have done that without Brexit. However, Mr. Jessup said, we didn't need Brexit to achieve that, as regardless of the UK's trade arrangements, well-run companies would have made such a move anyway if they felt it necessary. As such, the effects of the current global economic crisis on consumer prices would have likely been weathered by companies in much the same way. Mr. Jessup said, if you're a private business, and we were still in the EU, and you wanted to reduce your exposure to global commodity prices or global supply shocks, you could have done so anyway. He added, if companies were happy to import from the rest of the world including the EU before, and all that's changed is that the cost of doing so has gone up, then I don't see why no longer doing that is going to be of any benefit to UK consumers. If it made sense to do it before the costs went up, how are we any better off if we can no longer afford to do it when the costs have risen? So simply forcing people, effectively, to source goods at home rather than import them from overseas is not a benefit to UK consumers. I don't see any way in which it is. This would be to the benefit of domestic producers and manufacturers, as they have less competition from overseas vendors. But Mr. Jessup noted that we should put the interests of consumers ahead of manufacturers when it came to economic decisions. While the UK might be more resilient to shocks in the international markets, supply chains and therefore supply to consumers more liable to shocks in domestic supply.